This video contains content that may disturb you and challenge your perception of reality. Ensure you're in a safe space before you continue. Hello, and welcome to Horror Flix. I'm Charlie. Tonight, we will look into 6 stories so disturbing, so bone-chilling, they blur the line between reality and nightmare. These aren't tales from horror movies. They're real accounts, whispered by those lucky enough to survive, or left behind as grim reminders from night shifts that spiral into sheer terror to twisted encounters beyond belief. Night shift. Terror. Bryce Alexander needed an escape. After clashing with his father, he found himself subletting a lonely little rental cabin at the far end of a dirt road in 2023. It wasn't much. Just a small 2-story cabin with a crooked kitchen, a dusty living space, and a single bedroom you could only reach by climbing creaky stairs and opening a strange hatch door. It wasn't perfect, but it was all he could afford. And it was supposed to be temporary. By the time Bryce had paid his second month's rent, he had settled in. The neighbors, strangers. One house nearby seemed abandoned. The others might as well have been. After working brutal 12-hour shifts, Bryce's nightly routine was simple. Make a sandwich, drink a protein shake, and collapse into bed with the TV droning softly in the background. But one night, the nightmare began. Bryce had just shut the hatch door like always. It never locked, but it made him feel slightly safer. As he lay in bed half watching TV, he heard it. A voice. A low, chilling voice drifting up from the darkness below. "Who's up there?" Bryce froze. His blood ran cold. Was it outside? Inside? He lunged for the TV remote, silencing the noise, and crawled to the tiny circular window above the bed. Darkness. No one in sight. Terror creeping into his chest, Bryce whispered back, "Who's there?" Silence answered him. Swallowing his fear, Bryce opened the hatch door and peered down the stairwell. Nothing. He even called out his dad's name, just in case. But the emptiness only mocked him. Still, he forced himself downstairs, flicking on the living room lights. No one. No broken windows. No open doors. Convincing himself it must have been someone outside playing tricks, Bryce switched off the lights and scurried back up to his room, pulling the hatch door shut behind him. He turned the TV back on to calm himself. 5 minutes later, bam, 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 pounding fists slammed against the bedroom hatch from below. Bryce's heart nearly exploded out of his chest. Someone was inside. The pounding was vicious, almost animalistic, like whoever or whatever was down there wanted to tear the door off its hinges. Bryce didn't move, couldn't move. He knew the flimsy hatch door could easily be pushed open. There was no lock, so he stayed frozen, pretending not to breathe for what felt like hours. Finally, when the silence returned, Bryce dared to move. He needed his phone, but it wasn't on his nightstand. Panic deepening, he realized it might be downstairs. Opening the hatch, he peered into the strobe-lit darkness. Only the flicker of the TV offered any light. Quiet as a ghost, he crept down the stairs. When he reached the bottom, Bryce didn't waste time searching. He bolted. Barefoot, he sprinted across the gravel to the nearest neighbor's house, pounding on the door. A figure appeared in the window. A man. But he didn't open the door. He just stared. Bryce screamed for help, banging harder, begging for a phone. Still, the man said nothing, just watched him. Smiling faintly, a new terror bloomed inside Bryce. Was this man part of it? Without waiting to find out, Bryce ran. Back through the dark, back to the cabin. The back door was closed, exactly how he'd left it. Inside, Bryce flipped on every light. He searched every corner for the intruder. Nothing. He searched for his phone and remembered it was in his car. He found it in the center console, left there in his earlier exhaustion. Relief flooded him. But upstairs, the TV was still flickering. The hatch door was still slightly open. And in that moment, Bryce realized he was never alone. Another story that was given is about the man behind the glass. Mark regrettably used to work at a small hotel in town. After a hurricane hit, many homes were damaged, and the hotel had a short burst of guests. But soon, it got quieter than ever. The hotel was a standard bed and breakfast kind of place. Nights were slow. He worked the night shift from 6 p.m. to 2 a.m., often spending hours alone in the back break room. One night, he heard a deep voice from the lobby repeatedly calling, "Hello, Warren." He got up and saw a man at the glass barrier asking for towels. Sliding some under the glass, he noticed the man's strange, aggressive way of grabbing them. He watched him on the security monitors. The man wandered the halls, rubbing the towels against his face. It was unsettling, but he got in the elevator and disappeared from view. Minutes later, the same man was back, banging on the glass. "My keycard's broken," he said. He asked for his room number. The man blurted out something like 2C, but their rooms were numbered, no letters. He calmly told the man, "Our rooms don't have letters." The man smiled, tilted his head to the glass and whispered, "I'm going to kill you." Again and again, each time louder, each time more chilling. Shaking, he grabbed the phone, showing the man he was calling 911. The man just laughed, a sick, mocking laugh, and slowly walked out of the hotel. When the dispatcher asked if he still needed an officer, he said no. The danger seemed to have passed. For the rest of his shift, he stayed in the lobby, too shaken to return to the break room. Finally, his relief came. He clocked out and stepped into the cold night, pulling his hood up. Halfway across the empty parking lot, he heard it, a voice from the bushes lining the hotel wall. He didn't stop to listen. He picked up his pace. Onto the main road, nothing but silence and his own footsteps. But then, another set of footsteps, quick and light, creeping up behind him. He turned. The footsteps stopped. There was a parked car. Someone was hiding behind it. And then he heard laughing. That same voice again, whispering in the dark. The night the van followed her. It was a Tuesday night in 2013, around 11 p.m., when Leah T was walking down a dimly lit street after a long shift at work. Her car was in the shop, and for days she had been forced to walk 3 miles home. The town was small, deep in southern Indiana, and after 10 p.m., the roads were almost dead silent. The only vehicles were the occasional truckers passing through. Leah was about a mile into her walk when she turned onto a dirt road leading toward the woods. Her house sat hidden away, off the main roads. As she turned, she heard the distant hum of a motor creeping closer. Squinting down the stretch of road, she spotted a van moving slowly, almost suspiciously, with no headlights on. At first, she thought nothing of it. Maybe it was just someone from the cheap used car dealership nearby. Broken lights weren't uncommon. She kept walking, pretending not to notice. But moments later, the van suddenly roared to life, speeding up fast. Now with headlights blasting before just as quickly, snapping them off again as it neared the dirt road turn. Leah's heart pounded. She tried not to look shaken, but instinctively picked up her pace. Every few seconds she glanced back, and then it happened. The van turned onto her road, creeping behind her like a predator. Panic clawed at her throat when she saw both the driver's and passenger's doors swing open while the van still crawled forward. She ran. The night swallowed her footsteps. Somewhere behind her, a loud bang, a gunshot, echoed through the trees. Leah sprinted harder, adrenaline blinding her with fear. She spotted a thick patch of woods to her right, veered sharply, and dove behind a huge rock. From her hiding spot, she heard voices. A gruff male voice muttered, "I think she went into the woods." Then, disturbingly, the voice of a young girl answered, "Okay, sir. I'll see if we can find her." More voices, more girls. It wasn't just one predator. It was a group. Frozen in terror, Leah covered her mouth with both hands to muffle her breathing. Then the man said something that chilled her blood. "Whoever finds her doesn't have to drink the blood tonight." She couldn't move, couldn't breathe. Were these kidnapped girls? Was this some kind of sick cult? Every snapping twig and gust of wind felt like death creeping closer. Minutes dragged by like hours until suddenly, flashing red and blue lights lit up the edges of the forest. Cops. Leah sprinted out from her hiding place, waving her arms and screaming. Officers rushed over, asking if she knew about the body. Confused, she followed their gaze, and there, near the squad car headlights, was the mangled, gutted body of a young woman. Blood soaked the ground around her. There was no sign of the van. Still trembling, Leah explained everything. The van, the man, the voices of the girls. The police promised to investigate and drove her home. Hours later, as she stared out her bedroom window, unable to sleep, Leah saw it again. The same van, lights off, crawling slowly down her street. This time, she wrote down the license plate and immediately called the police. When they arrived, the van had vanished again. What the officers told her next would haunt her forever. The plate was registered in South Dakota, but multiple reports had come in that very night. A suspicious van with that same plate spotted in Vermont, Nevada, Alaska, and Texas. Whatever was stalking her that night wasn't just a local nightmare. It was something much, much bigger. Leah moved out of Indiana not long after, and to this day, whenever she sees something strange, she runs. A call from nowhere. Mike and his wife lived a normal life, a quiet suburb, normal jobs, normal neighbors, the kind of American dream everyone was taught to chase. He wasn't a writer, hadn't typed anything this long since college. But what happened that night forced him to. It was just a regular evening. After work, he and Gianna went out for dinner, got back by 9. By 10, they were ready for bed, winding down with a TV show. Everything was as ordinary as it gets, until the phone rang. Gianna told him not to answer. Anyone calling this late couldn't bring good news. But Mike, thinking it might be an emergency, reached for the old landline. Before he could pick it up, it stopped ringing. The caller ID disappeared, their phone too old to save numbers. Strange, but maybe just a wrong number. Then it rang again. Unknown caller. Mike hesitated. Most people don't call after 9 p.m. unless it's serious. When it rang a third time, panic set in. He grabbed the phone. It was his neighbor, Al. "Do you know the man standing outside your house?" Before Mike could ask anything, Al hung up. Gianna's face turned pale. She begged him not to go out, so he just peeked through the window, but saw nothing. Curious and a little annoyed, Mike opened the door, checked the bushes. Nothing. Maybe Al was playing some weird prank. He called Al back, but it went straight to voicemail. Mike left a message, confused and a little irritated. Moments later, the phone rang again. Unknown caller. He picked up. It was Al's voice again. "Go outside. There's someone standing outside your house." The line cut. Mike's stomach dropped. He rushed to the window, and this time he saw him. A man, standing at the end of the walkway. A hood pulled low over his face, just blackness where a face should be. Mike opened the door and shouted, "Can I help you?" No answer. The man didn't move. Mike threatened to call the police. The phone rang again. This time it showed Al's real number. Al answered, sounding totally normal. "I just got your voicemail. What's going on?" Mike told him about the calls and the man outside. Al was confused. He swore he hadn't called. His wife got on the phone too. She backed him up. Mike looked outside again. The hooded man was gone. They never figured out who or what made those calls. A night Mark and Nicole will never forget. Mark worked in the pro department of a home improvement company, handling the closing shift with another cashier, Nicole. Nicole was a kind, timid woman. Pretty too, which meant she often attracted attention from contractors. While it was usually harmless, it made her uncomfortable. She'd politely turn down their advances, and when Mark first met her, he suggested she tell them about her girlfriend. Nicole, however, preferred to keep it private, saying it wasn't any of their business. Over time, she became his best friend. One evening, after Mark returned from lunch, Nicole mentioned a creepy guy who'd been flirting with her earlier. She turned him down, but he hadn't been pleased. Mark didn't think much of it until later that night when the same man returned. Nicole had stepped away to help a customer, so it was just Mark at the register. The man, appearing normal at first, told Mark he was there to see Nicole. He claimed that Nicole had accepted his invitation earlier, and now he had returned to pick her up. Mark lied, telling him she had already left for the day. The man grew irritated, insisting he needed to speak with her again. Mark, not wanting to reveal the truth about Nicole, blurted out that she was his fiancée. The man scoffed, questioning how someone as pretty as Nicole could be with someone like Mark. Mark brushed it off, saying they were getting married in a few months. The man's anger flared, and after a tense silence, he left. Nicole wasn't thrilled about the situation, but found the fiancé excuse amusing. A couple of weeks passed, and they both forgot about the creepy man. Then one night, as they were closing, a loud bang at the door startled them. The man was back, his eyes wild, pressing his face against the glass. Mark told him they were closed, but the man insisted. Nicole told him to leave, but the man responded, saying he wasn't there for her, he was there for Mark. He threatened to kill Mark, claiming that if he did, Nicole would be his. Mark told Nicole to run for help, staying to watch the man. The man began ramming the door, and it rattled as if it might break. Just as things seemed dire, Nicole returned with a 2x4 and yelled that the police were on their way. The man, now seeing the situation was escalating, finally left. The police arrived, and with the footage from the security cameras, they were able to arrest him. Though the experience was harrowing, it was a wake-up call for both Mark and Nicole, reminding them how dangerous it could be when a man didn't take no for an answer. The night she faced her worst fear alone. This happened a little over 2 years ago, and it's a memory that still haunts her. Gostia had just started a new job at a small motel in 2016. It wasn't glamorous or high-paying, but she needed the work. A friend, Michael, had helped her land the job. Her shift was from 11 p.m. to 7 a.m., a quiet, solitary time. The owner had left for vacation, so Gostia was on her own. After only a few days of training with Michael, her first night alone on the night shift was uneventful, until about 1 a.m. when a man walked in, asking for a room. He seemed normal enough, so Gostia didn't hesitate to check him in. But then something odd happened. The man started swatting at the air and making strange spitting noises, as if he was surrounded by flies. Goste tried to ignore it, just focusing on getting him checked in. She handed him the key, and he went on his way, or so she thought. It wasn't long before the man came back. He slammed his hand on the glass door, causing Gostea to jump. She looked up to see him staring at her with an unnerving intensity. He cracked the door open, and with a voice that sent chills down her spine asked, "Why won't you let me into my room?" Panic rose in her chest. She tried to stay calm and offered him another key, thinking that maybe it was a malfunction. But the look in his eyes, she knew something was wrong. Something wasn't right. She handed him the new key, but as he walked away, her fear escalated. She quickly texted Michael for help, but it was the middle of the night and he didn't respond. Desperate, Goste saw the man coming back down the stairs. Her heart raced as she ran into the back office and locked the door. She pulled out a pocket knife, the only form of protection she had. She could hear him yelling, "Hello, hello, why won't you let me into my room? Do you not like me?" Instead of calling the police like she should have, she hesitated, telling herself she could handle it alone. "I'm just on the phone," she said shakily. "I'll be right out." But the man wasn't done. She heard him in the bathroom muttering to himself, his voice low and angry. "Kill her. Kill her." Her blood ran cold. When he emerged, she was still too afraid to call the police. Instead, she stepped out of the office, apologizing and offering to escort him to his room. To her horror, he insisted on walking behind her. As they made their way toward the stairs, Goste kept glancing behind her, terrified he might make a move. He stopped at a room, and Goste, with a forced smile, told him it was the wrong one. His room was a few doors down. Finally, after making sure he was safely inside, she ran back to the office and locked the door. Goste's heart still pounded in her chest. She later learned that the man had tried to get into the room of a lone woman staying at the motel. The next guest was a police officer from a nearby town, and she confided in him, knowing she couldn't handle this on her own. The officer promised to keep an eye out. The man came back the next night, but Goste had already locked the doors and told him they were fully booked. She reported the incident to her boss when he returned from vacation, but he dismissed it as nothing serious. Though she continued working the night shift for the next year, that encounter with the man stuck with her. She learned a valuable lesson that night. Never ignore your gut and always trust your instincts. It wasn't just a creepy guest. It was a reminder of how dangerous things can get when you're alone, in the dark, and vulnerable. And sometimes, that one moment of hesitation can make all the difference. As the night wears on, the true terror begins to reveal itself. What started as a routine shift, a quiet walk, or an ordinary day quickly transforms into an ordeal that chills you to the bone. Bryce, Mark, and Leah all found themselves face to face with horrors that no one should ever have to encounter. From mysterious voices in the dark to strange figures that stalk them relentlessly. These experiences are reminders that sometimes the real danger lurks closer than we realize. And when you're least prepared, the nightmare steps into your world, ready to claim its next victim. What would you do if the darkness of the night closed in on you? These stories are only the beginning. Do you have a terrifying tale of your own? Share it with us in the comments. Stay safe out there, and remember, the real horror is often just a heartbeat away.